This video will be continuing our discussion of automation in Music STP. This time, we'll be looking at how to use automation IDs and parameter numbers to set up our hardware controller surfaces. I strongly recommend that you watch the previous video before starting this one, since it will explain automation IDs and parameter numbers in greater depth than here in this video. Controller setup is found on the system board when the full view is toggled on. Notice that the top of the full view contains a series of tabs that give us access to different screens. Click the Controller Setup tab to bring the Controller Setup screen into view. Setting up your controller parameters is very similar to working with the Automator board, although we do have a few unique options here. First, we need to make sure that Music STP recognizes your controller, and if it does, we need to select your controller to work with. In the top left corner of the Controller Setup view, we can find the Select Device button. This will open a sub-window with a list of all the currently recognized controllers. If you don't see your controller on the list, double-check to make sure it's plugged in, then hit Refresh Controller List. Once your device is recognized, simply select it from the menu and close the sub-window. Your controller should now be recognized as the current device, and its name should be in quotes in the message box below. Controllers tend to send out two types of MIDI messages: note messages and control messages. Keyboards and instrument controllers like drum pads usually send out note messages, while other control surfaces with sliders and knobs will typically send out control messages. We can use either type of message to get control over to our modules. Play the notes on the keyboard or move the sliders on your controller to see what current control or note number is being sent out from that parameter. You'll also see what value is being sent out from the current parameter. Keep this in mind. Each button, key, slider, and knob will send out two numbers when you use it: the note or control number and the velocity or value number. These pairs can be used to manipulate almost any parameter available in every MSDP module. For this demonstration, I'm using the virtual sliders. If you don't have any hardware, you can use our virtual controllers to get the same type of control directly from within the program. When using the virtual controllers, you do not need to specify any hardware device. The virtual controllers will work regardless of what device is currently selected. As of the making of this video, the virtual pads have not been completed. If not available by launch, this third type of virtual controller will be made available with one of the first official updates to the software. Once you've selected your hardware and are familiar with what control numbers your various controls send out, we can start to set up the routing. As with the Automator board, each row signifies a single routing message to set up. We'll begin, like before, by typing in the module ID that we'll be referring to with this message. Next, we'll select the parameter number to automate, and then we'll choose a mode. These modes are different than the Automator boards, since we'll be controlling the parameters differently. Scale will be the most useful mode for knobs and sliders. It allows you to scale the values being sent from your controller to the range you'd like to use for your parameter. Toggle and switch work better with keys and buttons. In these modes, you'll toggle or switch between low and high values. The difference between these modes is that in toggle, when you press a button, the parameter will move to a high value, and when you release the button, the parameter will move to the low value. In switch, the release of the button will be ignored, so that each time you press the key or button, it'll switch between the two values. For this first example, I'm going to set the mode to scale. As in the previous video, I'll set the low value to -12 and the high value to +12. This will allow us to ramp the value between the 2 points using our controller. Now, since the virtual controller is a slider, and we want the values to follow us in real time, we'll want a ramp time of 0 to 0.01 seconds. This will make sure that the parameter updates with us as we move our controller. 0 should work just fine, but a very short ramp time, like 0.01 or maybe up to 0.1, will ensure a nice, smooth transition. Finally, we need to tell the controller setup what control number or note number we're using. We can set this to look either for note numbers or control numbers by choosing the appropriate mode. The virtual slider sends values out via control numbers, so we'll use the control mode in this case. I'll use the first slider, which outputs to control number 1. So I'll input control number 1 into this part of the column. At that point, we're done setting this control parameter up. Let's see that control in action. Now notice that if I move the slider up and down, the pitch shifter's shift dial moves higher or lower in relation to the slider position. If we wanted to, we could continue to set up more parameters, and we could have multiple parameters controlled via a single control number or key number if we wanted. When everything is set up the way we want it, we can shift-click to save the controller to any of the preset boxes. This will be recalled upon reopening your program, although you can save separate preset files if you want to keep more setups available. There's one more method of automation, and it's by far the most robust. That is, through the creation of scores. Scores tend to become complex quickly and require a type of pseudo-programming. Because of the complexity of setting up scores, the tutorial for this feature will appear in a later series. This is where we'll end the discussion of automation in the first tutorial set. In the next and final video in this first series, we'll look at the remaining tabs on the full view: the Performer view, the Master Mixer, the Metronome, and the Project settings.